Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Transmigrated to a medieval Pokémon world. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 121. In a quiet house on the outskirts of Lucian City, warm lamplight flickered through the windows, casting a gentle glow across the room. Two girls, about 17 or 18 years old, stood in the living room, their faces full of disbelief. The knights who had brought them here had told them that this place was now their home, a house personally arranged by His Highness Lucian. Everyone who came to this new territory would be given a place to live. Not only that, but the two had been served a generous dinner, a basket of soft white bread, 2 grilled fish glazed with honey and roasted to a golden brown, and a tray of fresh vegetables, fruits, and drinks. Selena and Lena Joy, long branded as cursed and unlucky, could hardly believe what they were seeing. Could there really be someone in this world kind enough to treat them this way? Even their own father had despised them. The villagers, fearful of their identical faces, had called them omens and cast them out. Lena's small voice trembled. "Sister, can we really eat this?" Selena said nothing at first. Her thoughts were tangled, uncertain. She recalled the words of the knight who had escorted them here. "Don't worry, there are no slaves in this land. From now on, this house is your home. Prince Lucian ordered that everyone will receive their own house, live here in peace. You don't need to thank me, thank Prince Lucian. This was all his doing." Even now, Selena still found it hard to believe. She looked at the warm bread and steaming fish before her, her heart aching as if the scene might vanish any second. Who exactly is Prince Lucian, she wondered. Why would someone like him show such kindness to people like us? But before she could think any further, her empty stomach growled. She closed her eyes briefly, murmuring a small prayer. "Even if this is a dream, please, let us wake up a little later." "Eat slowly, Lena," she said softly. "Yes, sister," Lena replied, clutching her bread. As soon as she took the first bite, the sweetness spread across her tongue. Her eyes filled with tears, and she couldn't stop eating. After dinner, the sisters cleaned up, then crawled into bed together as they always had. The beds were soft and warm, far more comfortable than the cold ground or straw huts they'd slept in for years. Lena curled up in her sister's arms. "Sister, are we dreaming?" To be sure, she pinched her own thigh. "Ow! That hurt." Selena smiled faintly. "Then it's not a dream." Lena hesitated for a moment, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why is Prince Lucian being so kind to us?" "I don't know," Selena admitted quietly. "But no matter what happens, things won't be worse than before." The two sisters had been wandering for so long. At last, with full stomachs and soft blankets, they drifted into the deepest, most peaceful sleep they'd known in years. Early the next morning, a knock came at their door. When they opened it, a knight in armor stood waiting. "His Highness Lucian requests your presence," he said respectfully. At once, the two girls tensed up. "Sister," Lena whispered nervously, clutching Selena's hand. Selena gave it a reassuring squeeze, though she felt anxious herself. "It's all right. Let's go." Following the knight, they passed through the bright morning streets of Lucian City. The air was filled with the sounds of life, merchants setting up stalls, Pokémon chirping in the distance, and the rhythmic clatter of hooves on the cobblestone road. After several turns, they arrived before a grand building they had glimpsed the day before, the town city hall. Soon, they were led into a lavishly decorated room on the top floor of City Hall. Their eyes instinctively lifted to the figure standing by the tall window. The man turned as they entered, his calm gaze meeting theirs. Lucian's expression softened slightly. The moment he saw their faces, two identical young women with gentle eyes and nervous hands clasped together, he felt a quiet warmth stir within him. Yes, they really are the Joys. Selina and Lena Joy hesitated near the doorway, stealing anxious glances at the nobleman before them. They couldn't guess why the prince wanted to see them, and their hearts beat faster with unease. Lucian noticed their tension and smiled reassuringly. "There's no need to be nervous. I only wanted to speak with you, to learn about your situation." The sisters froze, startled by his gentle tone. "I heard you came from a small village," Lucian continued. "And that you were imprisoned in the capital for stealing bread. Is that true?" Lena bit her lip and nodded timidly. "We didn't mean to. We were just so hungry, Your Highness. We tried to find work, but everyone was afraid of us. No one would even come near." "Lena." Selina stopped her softly and bowed her head. "Forgive us, Your Highness. We've already caused you trouble. It was our fault, and we will accept any punishment." Lucian raised an eyebrow, half amused, half sympathetic. "Punishment? Why would I punish you?" Selina looked confused. "Then, why did Your Highness summon us?" Lucian chuckled quietly. "You've already suffered enough. I called you here not to punish you, but to tell you something important." He looked at them with steady eyes. "From this day forward, you are no longer slaves. Whatever happened before doesn't matter anymore. You're free now. Live well here." For a moment, the sisters could only stare at him, speechless. Finally, Selina whispered, almost afraid to believe it. "Your Highness, you're not afraid of us?" Lucian tilted his head. "Afraid? Why would I be? Even witches who could command magic served openly under him. He had never feared anyone because of their nature." "Because..." Selina hesitated, her voice trembling. "We're cursed. Everyone says that those who have children with us will bear daughters who look exactly like us." She lowered her gaze. "People believe that anyone close to us will be struck by misfortune." Lena nodded tearfully. "They say our faces bring bad luck. That's why no one ever wanted to hire us or speak to us." Lucian was silent for a few seconds, then smiled faintly. "I have a different way of seeing it." He leaned forward slightly. "Tell me, have you ever observed magical beasts?" The sisters blinked in confusion. "Magical beasts?" Selina asked. Lucian nodded. "Children born to the same species of magical beast all share the same appearance, the same traits, the same patterns." "Don't you think that sounds familiar?" The sisters exchanged stunned looks. They had never thought of it that way. "So..." Lena stammered, "You mean my sister and I were like magical beasts?" Lucian smiled faintly and continued, "Not only you. I've heard some scholars studying human origins suggest that humans themselves may once have been a kind of magical beast. Some even believe that humans evolved from them. Perhaps what you've experienced is a kind of atavism, an echo of the past that shows through your bloodline." Selina and Lena's eyes widened in disbelief. "Then, that means we're not cursed at all?" Selina asked hesitantly. "Of course not," Lucian replied without hesitation. "There's no curse here, only misunderstanding." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Selina stepped forward and bowed deeply, her voice trembling. "I understand now. Thank you very much, Your Highness." As she spoke, Lucian noticed the faint golden shimmer on the system panel before him. Their loyalty had risen sharply, from 0 to 80. He smiled. "Tell me, do you have any particular skills? Farming, carpentry, smithing, fishing, construction, anything of that sort?" The two sisters exchanged uneasy glances. "No, Your Highness," Lena admitted softly. "We come from a small village. We never learned any trade skills. We just did what we could to survive." Selina lowered her head in shame. "Stealing bread hardly counts as a skill." Lucian chuckled quietly. He took a piece of parchment from his desk, quickly wrote a few lines, stamped it with his seal, and handed it to Selina. "Take this letter," he said. "Find a woman named Lila.
She's skilled in medicine and healing. She'll teach you what you need to know. Selina carefully accepted the letter as if it were something sacred. Yes, Your Highness, she said, her voice steady but full of emotion. As the sisters bowed and turned to leave, Lucian watched them go, a satisfied smile forming on his lips. Good. Now, his territory had its Joy sisters. Chapter 122, The Flourishing City of Lucian. Following the townspeople's directions, the Joy sisters arrived at a townhouse. Entering the yard, they were greeted by a brilliantly blooming flower field, carefully maintained and full of color. Beside it was a lush herb garden where several Pokémon were lazily sunbathing. Seeing the identical-looking Pokémon basking in the sun, Lena couldn't help recalling what Prince Lucian had just told them. Big sis, we really aren't cursed, right? But Selina still wasn't sure either. There's no point thinking about that now. Since His Highness Lucian has accepted us, what we should do is learn a proper skill and repay him, Selina said gently. Lena paused for a moment, then nodded. Okay, big sis. Selina stepped forward and knocked on the door. Knock, knock, knock. Soon, footsteps approached from inside. The door opened, revealing a young woman. Excuse me, is this Miss Lyra's home? Selina asked. I am, Lyra replied. She looked at the two identical girls with surprise and couldn't help asking, and who might you two be? His Highness Lucian sent us. Selina handed over the letter of introduction. Lyra opened it, quickly read the contents, and then smiled warmly. Come in. Selina quietly let out a breath of relief. Lyra seemed kind and gentle. As she led them inside, she explained. Welcome to Lucian City. Don't worry, His Highness already told me about you too. From now on, you'll stay here and learn from me. I'll teach you how to become physicians. Physicians? Lena blinked in surprise. That's right. Lyra nodded. His Highness said the two of you are well suited for this job. It seems he places high hopes on you. Both sisters felt a bit overwhelmed. How could that be? They had only just met him. His Highness wouldn't arrange something without reason, Lyra added softly. Since he entrusted you to me, I will teach you everything I know. And don't be afraid, His Highness is a wise and kind ruler. You probably don't know, right? 7 months ago this place was a wasteland. Under Prince Lucian's leadership, this entire city was built in only 7 months. 7 months? Lena gasped. Of course, it wasn't just humans, magical beasts helped greatly too. Lyra said with a smile. Magical beasts. The sisters exchanged a look. Yes, the city was full of Pokémon unlike any other place they'd lived. Lyra noticed their surprise and laughed lightly. Don't worry, magical beasts aren't as scary as people think. Look, they're adorable. She reached out and patted a petalil on the head. Lena gulped unconsciously. All right, back to the topic. Lyra continued, since His Highness entrusted you to me, I'll pass on all my medical knowledge to you. I hope you both study hard and don't disappoint him. Yes, the sisters answered at once. To be a proper physician isn't easy. You need to learn how to prepare medicine, identify herbs, judge injuries, and treat them, not only for humans, but for magical beasts as well. The sisters listened with full attention. To repay Prince Lucian and live up to his expectations, they vowed to give their best. Sunlight shone outside the window, and a breeze made the petalil sway gently. At that moment, Selina and Lena Joy made up their minds. To express their gratitude to Prince Lucian for accepting them, and to live up to His Highness's expectations, they were determined to study hard. Elif, how is the settlement of the civilians His Majesty sent over? Late at night, the old butler slowly reported the current state of the territory to Lucian. Under Lord Gerald's command, the 200 knights who came from the royal capital have now officially joined our army. As per your instructions, Lord Gerald plans to head outside the city tomorrow to find suitable magical beasts to partner with them.
As for the farmers, physicians, miners, blacksmiths, and carpenters, they have all gone to their respective posts. They're refining or crafting furniture and supporting the city's daily needs.
Their families have also moved into town and are gradually integrating into life here. In addition, Zach's caravan has settled into our city as well.
Their shops have begun selling specialties from other cities to our people.
Hearing this, Lucian nodded.
Good, everything was progressing exactly as he planned.
Except.
Lucian suddenly remembered the group of Pokémon the old king had sent from the royal capital, the ones who had formerly been slaves. How are those magical beasts doing? He asked. As you instructed, we designated a nature reserve outside the city. A portion of the beasts has already gone there to live. Some, like Skitty, who cannot survive alone in the wild, have been adopted by civilians inside the city. The rest, mainly the Girder and Machoke, have joined the Machoke house, and under the leadership of the two Machoke from before, they've now entered the construction team to work with us.
Ha!
Lucian was a little surprised. So far, Elif continued, the construction team has a total of 40 Machoke, 6 Machop, 32 Girder, and 8 Timber.
And there is something else that shocked me even more. What is it? Elif's face showed clear astonishment. This group of magical beasts completed 2 weeks' worth of work in just one day. At this rate, our entire town will be completely finished by next week at the latest. Even Lucian couldn't help but be stunned.
These Pokémon were ridiculously capable. But then again, with the addition of the Machoke and Machop, the number of Pokémon in the construction team had already reached nearly 90.
Can the Machoke house even fit that many? Lucian wondered aloud. Sensing Lucian's concern, Elif quickly explained.
The Machoke house can no longer hold them, but there's no need to worry, Your Highness.
These Machoke have already earned the workers' trust.
Many workers invited some of the Machoke and other magical beasts to stay in their own homes and live with them. Only then did Lucian breathe a sigh of relief. You've worked hard, Elif. This loyal old butler had diligently carried out every one of his decisions. Without him, Lucian could never have managed all this alone. To serve you is no hardship, Your Highness. Elif looked at the prince before him, a young man who had undergone a complete transformation, and couldn't help but sigh emotionally. If His Majesty could see you now, he would be utterly stunned. 7 months ago, the prince had been nothing more than a naive boy who had just left the royal city. Now, the qualities of a true king were beginning to show in him.
His Highness has grown up.
Lucian didn't know how to respond, so he could only shift the topic.
It's getting late, Elif. You should go back and rest. Elif bowed and slowly retreated.
Yes, Your Highness. You should rest early as well.
Chapter 123, Target, Kiram. Watching Elif's figure disappear, Lucian slowly exhaled a long breath.
Night had grown deep, and the entire territory glowed with warm lights. Lucian stood by the second-floor window, gazing across the whole town. A quiet but overwhelming sense of accomplishment slowly rose in his chest. The glow of kerosene lamps shone through every window. Families were likely gathered around their tables, eating dinner with their Pokémon companions. The wild Pokémon living in the town had probably already eaten and were now curled up in the grass, on roadside benches, or atop rooftops, sleeping peacefully.
The town was lively and full of life.
Outside the town stretched vast Pokémon ranches and growing fields. The ranches housed Pokémon that produced valuable resources such as honey and wool, while crops in the fields grew vigorously thanks to the help of Dugtrio, Diglett, and Sandshrew. These orchards, pastures, and farmlands provided the entire territory with a stable foundation that supported every resident's daily needs. At long last, his territory was beginning to settle into a proper rhythm.
Lucian breathed out softly.
Next, he would expand the town's facilities, encourage commercial development, create Pokémon centers and hospitals, open shops, academies, and other public institutions, and establish breeding houses for hatching and caring for young Pokémon.
Morix's production of Pokeballs would also have to be expanded.
Because once the town was fully completed, Lucian planned to officially promote trainer culture. Using Pokémon eggs produced in the breeding houses, he would give them to the children of the territory, forming the very first generation of trainers in this era.
Trainers would play a crucial role in the territory's future.
Beyond serving as a military force to defend the town, trainers would also be essential to daily life. If an ordinary civilian wanted to get close to a particular Pokémon or raise one, but didn't have the ability to do so, they could hire a trainer to help.
Trainers could also handle Pokémon disturbances and calm any Pokémon that went out of control.
Previously, with fewer Pokémon around, such incidents were rare. But now, with the growing population of Pokémon in the territory, the chances of accidents or riots would naturally increase. Lucien quietly sorted out his plans for the coming days.
At that moment, Dragonair's voice sounded behind him.
He turned around and saw Dragonair, Larvesta, Victini, and several Minccino poking their heads into the study.
Lucien immediately understood.
They were here to remind him to go to bed because he hadn't returned to his room yet.
"All right, I'll come right away." Lucien quickly washed up, changed clothes, and lay down on the bed.
The moment he settled down, all the Pokémon happily scrambled to their sleeping spots.
5 Minccino sprawled out messily at the foot of the bed.
Servine lay on the rug beside him.
Dragonair curled up to Lucien's left. Larvesta plopped down on his stomach.
Victini watched the entire scene with bright curiosity, then flew under the blankets without hesitation, burrowed into Lucien's arms with only its head sticking out, and very thoughtfully tucked the blankets around itself.
Nini. Surrounded by a group of Pokémon, Lucien felt both happy and annoyed.
In winter, how wonderful it would be to huddle together for warmth while sleeping. But now it was June, and the temperature was gradually rising, already showing signs of summer.
Sleeping together like this at this time of year made Lucien feel unbearably hot.
Especially since Larvesta naturally had a high body temperature, Lucien often woke up in the middle of the night feeling overheated, and whenever he touched his back, it was already covered in sweat. And in this era, with no such thing as air conditioning, Lucien didn't even want to imagine what the peak of summer would feel like. If only he could somehow bring down the Articuno from the snowy mountains and use it as a living air conditioner, Lucien couldn't help fantasizing. If that failed, running into a Gengar would be nice too. Ghost types were naturally cool.
Unfortunately, since his transmigration, Lucien hadn't encountered many ghost-type Pokémon.
While thinking about ice types, Kyurem's colossal, imposing silhouette surfaced in Lucien's mind. Previously, his strength had been far too limited.
Challenging Kyurem would have been suicide.
But now, months of relentless training had begun to pay off. Servine was extremely close to evolving into superior.
Dragonair still needed more time, but it was steadily approaching Dragonite.
As for Larvesta, evolution was still a long way off.
But then Lucien wondered. Could Victini fight Kyurem?
He scanned through Victini's move list again, and the sheer lineup made him whistle inwardly.
Burnout. Flame Burst. Psychic Hammer.
Purgatory.
Flame Jet. Psychic Power.
V-Create.
It was powerful, but judging from Victini's nature and abilities, it seemed better suited for support than for one-on-one combat.
Victini was a mythical Pokémon of victory. It generated infinite energy and could share that power with anything it touched.
With Victini supporting them, even weaker Pokémon could perform above their limits. But actual combat experience? The original owner's memories had no battles involving Victini. Lucien thought for a moment.
Then he simply turned to the small creature nestled in his blankets.
Victini. Nini? Victini, who had slept the entire afternoon, was now fully awake.
Hearing Lucien call it, the little Pokémon immediately fluttered into the air.
"I want to ask you something," Lucien said. "Nini."
Victini puffed out its tiny chest proudly.
"Ask anything." It would definitely tell Lucien everything it knew. "Well, I was wondering," Lucien continued gently, "are you good at battling other Pokémon?" "Nini? Battle?" Victini tilted its head, thinking carefully.
A moment later it nodded with great spirit.
Nini. Of course, MIT had never lost a battle. But why was Lucian asking such a thing? Nini? Victini blinked in confusion.
Lucian sighed and rested his chin lightly on his arms. My older brothers are about to start a war, he explained. I've heard they each have a legendary Pokémon, Reshiram, the Dragon of Truth, and Zekrom, the Dragon of Ideals. Their power far surpasses ordinary Pokémon. Right now, with our current strength, we can't possibly win against them.
Nini. Victini's eyes flashed with determination. Nini. No matter what, it would protect Lucian.
Even if the enemies were terrifying, even if the odds were impossible, Victini would give everything it had.
Lucian couldn't help laughing softly. I'm not asking you to go to the battlefield. Nini?
Victini froze, confused again. I want to ask for a different kind of help, Lucian said, his voice low and thoughtful.
I've heard that besides Reshiram and Zekrom, there's another legendary dragon in this kingdom. Kyurem. A being whose strength isn't inferior to either of them.
Lucian looked toward the window, into the dark night beyond.
So I was thinking, if we can earn Kyurem's approval,
then we might truly have the power to stand against my brothers.
Chapter 124, Superior. Nini?
Victini tilted its head, clearly confused.
Kyurem?
It had never even heard that name before.
But since Lucian needed help, Victini would help with everything it had. Nini. Its tiny face was full of burning determination.
Seeing this, Lucian finally let out a relieved breath. Fortunately, even though he wasn't Victini's trainer, the two had grown up together. Victini would definitely help him search for Kyurem.
However, it still wasn't time. Lucian fell into deep thought. Dragonair still needed quite a while before evolving into Dragonite. Larvesta had only recently hatched and was nowhere near evolving into Volcarona.
Right now, his strongest Pokémon was Servine, who was also close to evolving.
Lucian decided
he would wait for Servine to evolve, then Superior, before traveling to Lacunosa town. To reach that goal faster, training began early the next morning.
Morning training ground.
Lucian stood in the open clearing, facing the three Pokémon lined up in front of him. After months of training, their strength, speed, and combat instincts had transformed dramatically.
Dratini had evolved into Dragonair, now able to fly and manipulate air currents with ease.
Dragonair, Lucian said, besides strengthening your wind control, today I'm teaching you a new move, Draco Meteor. He explained the flow of dragon-type energy, the compression, the release angle, and how the exploding energy becomes meteors.
Dragonair nodded and flew aside to begin training diligently. Next was Servine.
Thanks to tending berry orchards daily, Servine's control over grass-type energy had improved immensely. Its magical leaf was already close to forming a true leaf storm. Servine, Lucian said gently, your task is to keep refining magical leaf, and push it toward leaf storm. Your agility is your greatest strength, so speed training is still essential. Servine gave a calm, confident nod. When it came to serious matters, it was always reliable.
Good. I'm counting on you.
Servine immediately moved to start high-intensity training.
Finally, Lucian turned to Larvesta.
Larvesta had exceptional talent for controlling fire-type energy. Its move mastery improved twice as fast as others. Larvesta, your requirement is simple, Lucian said.
Every move you know must be able to activate within 1 second.
Then he took out several firestones he had collected from the volcanic hot springs. You can absorb these to purify your fire energy and strengthen your flames.
Moa. Larvesta agreed enthusiastically.
The three Pokémon began their intense training. At the Knight's headquarters, the soldiers trained with their Arons and Swablu using Lucian's new methods, physical drills, coordinated move practice, and structured sparring. Lucian City's military strength grew daily. One afternoon, during a sparring session against Dragonair, Servine suddenly shone with a brilliant white light.
Evolution? Stop. Lucian quickly called Dragonair back and turned toward Servine. Inside the milky white glow, Servine's silhouette lengthened and rose. This time, unlike when it resisted evolving before, Servine didn't fight the change at all. Servine gazed intently at Lucian, its newly evolved form still shimmering faintly with remnants of light. In that moment, it understood everything perfectly. Lucian needed strength, real strength, at his side. And after all this time together, after all the trust built between them, Servine no longer feared evolution. Even without limbs, Lucian would protect it. Lucian would guide it. So, to better support him, and to gain power capable of shielding him, Servine had finally chosen to evolve. Within the dazzling white glow, its limbs dissolved, its body lengthened, and an elegant, regal silhouette emerged. When the light faded, a new Pokémon stood proudly on the grass. A creature with a noble posture, emerald-white scales, collar-like leafy ornaments around its neck, and ruby eyes carrying a touch of aristocratic disdain. The final evolution of Snivy, Superior, had been born. It slowly settled onto the grass, lifting its head to meet Lucian's eyes. Lucian inhaled sharply, excitement pounding in his chest. "Congratulations, Superior." Superior held itself with graceful dignity, appearing proud and unapproachable, yet when its gaze rested on Lucian, a soft, gentle warmth flickered in those ruby eyes. Pokémon, Superior. Type, Grass. Gender, Female. Ability, Contrary. Moves, Tackle, Leer, Vine Whip, Growth, Wrap, Grass Knot, Magical Leaf, Leech Seed, Slam, Leaf Blade, Energy Ball, Leaf Storm, Solar Beam. Friendship, 100. Background. Omitted. Leaf Blade. Energy Ball. Leaf Storm. Solar Beam. Lucian couldn't stop the joyous grin spreading across his face. Superior had gained so many powerful techniques at once. Of course, this was thanks to the strict training he'd given her, especially in fine control of grass-type energy. With Superior, I finally have real protection, Lucian thought, relief washing over him. Beside her, Dragonair let out a competitive cry, refusing to be overshadowed. It didn't want Lucian's attention stolen by this newly evolved Superior. Determined to impress him, Dragonair lifted its head high. Deep purple dragon-type energy surged into its mouth, condensing, compressing, reaching instability. And then it launched the sphere skyward. A heartbeat later. Boom! The compressed orb exploded in the sky, splitting into countless blazing purple meteors that rained downward like a cosmic storm. Lucian's eyes widened instantly. That's Draco Meteor? Dragonair had mastered it too? Lucian's smile grew even wider. This was a double celebration. Though, the power was terrifying. Each falling meteor carved deep craters into the ground. Lucian felt a chill. Thank goodness they were training in an empty field, far from buildings or civilians. Otherwise, the destruction would have been disastrous. Dragonair! You must never use that move inside town again. Chapter 125, Town completed. Prince Lucian, what happened here? The explosion of light and the meteor-like barrage created by Dragonair's Draco meteor had immediately drawn the attention of the patrolling knights. Geralt was among them. Worried something had happened to Lucian, he sprinted toward the training grounds with several knights behind him. "It's nothing," Lucian said with a light laugh, patting Dragonair's smooth head. Dragonair just learned a powerful new move. A new move. The two younger knights behind Geralt stared at the massive craters gouged into the earth and felt their throats tighten. What kind of move could punch holes in the ground like that? Training ended successfully that day, and to celebrate Superior's evolution, Lucian specially ordered a feast of all her favorite foods. Around the table, his Pokémon were happily gathered, eating with bright, spirited eyes. Lucian especially paid attention to Superior. Though she had lost her limbs after evolving, Superior now used her vine whips to elegantly bring food to her mouth. Every gesture carried the refined air of nobility. Superior felt his gaze. She turned, meeting Lucian's eyes, her expression calm but softened by a gentle warmth. Lucian smiled and shook his head. "Don't mind me. Enjoy your meal.
Elif has something to discuss with me. I'll be in my study handling some official business. None of the Pokémon objected, they were far too focused on the feast. Leaving the dining room to them, Lucien entered his study, where Elif was already waiting. The old steward bowed deeply. Your Highness Lucien, just as you predicted, thanks to the Makhok and others, our town is now fully completed. Not only that, Elif added with a hint of pride, our craftsmen used the concrete crafted by the Conkeldurr to construct a great bridge across the river, linking both banks.
Lucien nodded approvingly. Excellent progress.
Then Elif carefully unfurled a large parchment map across the desk.
This is the town map Lady Christina drew for you.
Lucien leaned closer. Every district was neatly labeled. Lucien's city now expanded in a circle outward from the city hall at the center. Residential areas, commercial streets, barracks, gardens, plazas, and recreational zones formed the heart of the settlement. Around them stretched brick hills, farmland, pastures, orchards, and Pokémon ranches, forming a wide, productive ring around the whole town. Thanks to Lucien and Elena's forward-thinking designs, the city preserved extensive green spaces, tree-lined paths, gardens, mini-parks, and beautiful, comfortable, and ideal habitats for Pokémon. But the part that pleased Lucien the most was the underground water and drainage system. Using Dugtrio and Diglett, the workers had carved advanced channels beneath the entire town, far more sophisticated than anything in this era.
The territory was now divided into two major districts. East Lucien City, where Lucien currently lived. West Lucien City, across the river on the plains, both sides connected by sturdy new bridges.
Those who came from the capital have already begun moving into their new homes, Elif reported.
Our town is now ready to support a population of 5,000. Lucien exhaled slowly.
From this point on, it would be up to the citizens to develop the town further. From what he'd observed, many young men and women had grown close after spending time together here.
Some had even held simple weddings, witnessed by their parents. Lucien believed that before long, new life would be born in the territory. Overall, Lucien's city was thriving, and he was satisfied. After a moment of hesitation, Elif stepped forward. Your Highness, should we consider building city walls?
If war ever reached this region, a town without protective walls would be easily overrun by the forces of the first or second prince.
Lucien understood this issue well.
After all, this was still a medieval era. Human warfare continued to rely on cold weapons, siege engines, and brutal infantry combat. In such a world, a well-constructed city wall often meant the difference between survival and destruction. In this situation, a sturdy city wall could often play a decisive role. There was indeed related fortification technology in the territory's technology tree, but Lucien had never invested in it before. In that case, let them begin construction, Lucien said in a low, firm voice.
Understood.
I will have the construction teams continue building the castle and the city walls, Elif replied with a nod.
Lucien fell silent, deep in thought.
A month ago, his two brothers had already begun recruiting soldiers. Given the current pace, it was clear that war would erupt very soon.
They didn't have much time left. After thinking for several moments, Lucien finally spoke.
Elif, I may need to leave the territory for a while.
Elif froze, staring in shock. Your Highness, what are you saying? Have you ever heard of the legend of the dragon god? Lucien asked calmly.
The
dragon god? Elif looked completely puzzled. Lucien nodded lightly.
The dragon god was said to be an immensely powerful magical beast.
One day, it suddenly split into two, becoming two different dragon-type magical beasts.
Their strength is overwhelming, either one could destroy a nation. And they grant their approval to those they choose, helping them ascend the throne. As far as I know, my eldest and second brothers have already received the approval of these two dragon beasts.
With our current strength, we cannot match them. Elif's expression stiffened.
He suddenly recalled a secret rumor he had once overheard in the royal capital, about the two princes receiving help from a mysterious force.
Your Highness.
Elif trembled slightly, uncertain what they could possibly do if those two dragons truly existed.
Don't worry, Elif. Lucian continued, voice steady. That legend is incomplete. It's missing a crucial part. In the true story, aside from the two dragons, there is a third dragon. Before I left the royal city, I began investigating. Not long ago, I finally discovered traces of it. Lacunosa village, this dragon lives near Lacunosa village. Only by gaining its approval can we obtain the power needed to oppose my brothers. Hearing this, Elif's eyes widened. He immediately remembered the secret mission His Highness had entrusted to Ivan, to gather intelligence. I will need at least a month, Lucian said. Before I leave, I will arrange all future development plans for Lucian City. After that, everything will be in your hands. War could break out at any moment. The sooner they made contact with Kurum, the better. If the kingdom's army arrived at their doorstep, it would be too late. Your Highness, will it be dangerous? Elif asked anxiously, worry written all over his face. Lucian smiled lightly. No need to worry. Victini will accompany me. If the worst came to pass, they could always rely on Victini's powers to retreat safely. Elif opened his mouth but couldn't form the right words. He knew His Highness had already made up his mind. At last, the old steward bowed deeply and said only, Your Highness, please be careful. Chapter 126, Preparations before departure. Heading to the giant's cave to seek out Kurum was no small matter. The journey was fraught with danger, and merely approaching Kurum posed an enormous risk. As a legendary Pokémon, Kurum possessed overwhelming power. It could freeze half of the entire Unova region in an instant. If they accidentally angered it while drawing near, the consequences could be catastrophic. The only good news, Lucian thought to himself, is that according to the anime, legendary Pokémon can communicate with humans, and their intelligence far surpasses that of ordinary Pokémon. But reaching Kurum was only the first step, persuading it was a completely different problem. To win the acknowledgement of a legendary Pokémon, a trainer usually had to display substantial strength. A battle was the most direct way to prove oneself. But Lucian knew full well that even after months of rigorous training, his team was still far too weak to challenge Kurum head-on. Even so, he had no choice. With Victini accompanying him, even if they could not defeat Kurum, they should still be able to retreat safely using Victini's psychic abilities. Forget everything else for now. First, I need to make contact with Kurum. Lucian decided. Elif, that will be all for today, he said gently. The old steward's face reflected deep worry. Your Highness, no matter what happens, we are all behind you, every last person and magical beasts in this territory. I believe this with all my heart. The commoners, the freed slaves, the magical beasts who had once been abused. None of them wished to return to that life ever again. Lucian felt a warm surge in his chest. The smiling faces of the people and Pokémon living in Lucian City flashed before his eyes, giving him unshakable resolve. If, in the beginning, he had been driven forward solely by necessity and the brutal environment, now, he had a purpose worth fighting for. Before leaving, however, he had to arrange everything within the territory. After Elif departed, Lucian sat alone at his desk, deep in thought. He took a sheet of parchment, dipped his quill in ink, and began writing down the long-term plans and development priorities for Lucian City, one by one. First, the army. As the force responsible for defending the territory, their training must continue without pause. During his absence, Geralt and the other knights needed to push forward with daily drills, strengthening both their own skills and the abilities of their partnered Pokémon. Second, a hospital. The territory still lacked a proper medical facility. Soldiers, civilians, and Pokémon frequently fell ill or suffered injuries. Lucian hoped Lila, Selena, and Lena Joy, and the other doctors could take on this responsibility and build a functioning hospital as soon as possible. Third, food reserves. Besides meeting daily needs, a massive stockpile of food was essential for any potential war. They needed to expand farmland, cultivate more crops, raise additional Pokémon, and develop cooperative human-Pokémon agriculture. Fourth, commerce.
Strengthen relationships with the merchant caravans, expand commercial activity in the city, and open trade routes via river ships to other towns.
A wealthy city would have greater resilience. Fifth, an academy. All children aged 7 to 12 must receive formal education, literacy, understanding of magical beasts, agriculture, basic construction, and civic knowledge. A thriving territory needed knowledge, not just strength. Sixth, city walls.
A full defensive perimeter must be built around the territory to prepare for future wars.
Seventh, a breeding center.
Within the nature reserve, a facility dedicated to caring for Pokémon should be constructed, rescuing injured Pokémon, supplying food, nurturing eggs, and offering habitat support. The next morning, Lucien summoned Gerald, Ryan, Anna, Elif, and the others, laying out each development plan he had written the night before and emphasizing the important details they must not overlook. Only after giving every instruction, military training, food reserves, the academy, the hospital, the walls, the breeding center, and commercial expansion, did Lucien finally feel at ease.
He did not depart immediately.
Instead, he stayed in Lucien City for 3 more days, quietly observing the town's operations, confirming that every system, agriculture, security, construction, Pokémon handling, medicine, was running smoothly without him. Only then, on a quiet afternoon, Lucien finally departed, watched by Elif, Gerald, Anna, and the others as he set off for the distant giant's cave to find Kurum.
"Your Highness, please allow me and Haxorus to accompany you,"
Gerald pleaded, worry clouding his eyes.
Lucien shook his head gently.
"Gerald, the soldiers need you.
The army must be trained every single day. I'll be fine, with Victini and Dragonair, I won't be traveling alone." "Nini."
Victini raised its tiny paw, full of confidence.
"It would protect Lucien no matter what." "Your Highness."
Elif hesitated briefly, then bowed deeply. "Please, be careful."
Lucien smiled. "I will."
"Teacher." Anna's voice trembled with emotion. Her Zoroark stood behind her, holding her second Pokémon, a Hoothoot, the tufted owl Pokémon she had recently caught.
Lucien's expression softened. "Anna, I left you the full training manual for Hoothoot. Until I return, you must raise it well and become stronger. Understood?"
"Yes."
Anna nodded vigorously. "I will protect the territory, I promise." Lucien smiled warmly. The sun dipped low in the west. Lucien mounted the Bouffalant, its afro-like mane swaying with each breath. He looked back at everyone one last time.
Gerald, Elif, Ryan, Anna, all stood with determination in their eyes. Lucien waved, turned his mount, and rode away, Victini fluttering at his shoulder, Dragonair gliding overhead. His figure slowly shrank into the horizon. Gerald and Elif exchanged glances. Unlike Anna, they both understood the deeper meaning behind Lucien's departure. The prince had made his decision. He no longer placed any hope in the first prince or the second prince. He intended to fight, not only for his rightful place, but for the entire Unova region. Not just for humans, but for every magical beast who had suffered. For a nation where humans and Pokémon could coexist. No more abuse. No more slavery. A land where both species supported one another. Gerald closed his eyes, scenes flashing in his mind. Knights training alongside Aaron and Swablu. Farmers cultivating crops with Diglett, Dugtrio, and Sandshrew. Children laughing with wild Pokémon in the gardens. A peaceful city, Lucien City, built by humans and Pokémon together. His heart ignited. As a knight, he and his Haxorus would protect Lucien's ideals, even at the cost of their lives. Elif's feelings were far more turbulent. His prince had truly grown up. But the first prince and second prince commanded massive armies. Could Lucien really stand against them? His heart was filled with worry, but mixed with pride. Anna, meanwhile, felt nothing but fire. Merchants passing through had whispered the news. The war is coming. If it reached Lucien City, everything could be lost. Anna clenched her fists tightly. she refused to return to her old life. She wanted to stay right here, with her mother, with Zoroark, with Hoot Hoot.
Even if Lucian didn't want her on the battlefield.
She had made up her mind. No matter what happened, she and Zoroark would defend this home with their lives.
Chapter 127. The Rumors of the Man-Eating Beast. Lucian rode his buffalint northeastward.
When he was hungry, he stopped to eat the food he'd brought from his territory. When he grew tired, he rested. Occasionally, wild Pokémon would attack along the way, but with Serperior, Dragonair, Larvesta, and the others at his side, Lucian easily repelled them, using these encounters as training opportunities for Dragonair and Larvesta. Finally, on the third day after leaving Lucian City, a small village appeared ahead, nestled quietly between the mountains.
Just as Ivan's intelligence report described.
The village was tiny, barely a dozen households. A rough wooden palisade formed a perimeter, clearly a simple means of protection against wild Pokémon.
It was late afternoon. Women in linen aprons were washing clothes by the river, and several children were playing hand-in-hand in the village square.
The moment they saw Lucian, this stranger riding a buffalint, their expressions immediately shifted. Some looked at him with curiosity. Others shrank back in fear at the sight of the Pokémon.
Lucian dismounted and offered a friendly greeting. "Hello. My name is Lucian.
I'm a traveler who has been wandering for some time, but I seem to have lost my way.
May I ask, what is this place?" "A traveler?" The villagers slowly relaxed, though many couldn't help staring anxiously at Buffalint and Victini. "Don't worry," Lucian reassured them gently. "These are my magical beasts. They won't harm anyone."
At this, an elderly man stepped forward, a gray-haired, bearded elder leaning on a cane.
"This is the kingdom's borderlands. Lacunosa village," he said.
"Judging from your appearance, young man, you must have come from very far away."
"Lacunosa village, good."
He hadn't gone off course.
Lucian exhaled in quiet relief. "It's getting late," he said. "May I ask if there is an inn or a place to rest for the night?"
"No need for an inn," the old man laughed warmly. "It's rare for travelers to visit our little village.
If you don't mind humble hospitality, stay at my home tonight.
And, tell us what the outside world is like." "Thank you very much," Lucian replied with a polite smile.
The villagers dispersed, though a few children lingered, staring at Buffalint with fearful fascination. Just as Lucian suspected, the old man was indeed the village chief. After tying Buffalint beside the wooden house, Lucian followed the chief toward his home.
"Dear, we have guests," the village chief called as he stepped inside.
"Bring out something good so we can treat him properly."
"Whom?" An old woman appeared, wiping her hands. The chief quickly explained. After hearing the story, she smiled cheerfully.
"Then please stay here tonight." The simple, hospitable couple quickly prepared a hearty meal.
Given the human's fear of Pokémon in this era, Lucian did not release Serperior or Dragonair, so as not to frighten his hosts. "From your clothing and bearing, young man," the village chief said as they ate, "you must have come from very far away."
"Yes," Lucian nodded. "From Eindhoek Castle."
The couple froze in shock.
"Eindhoek Castle?"
the old woman exclaimed.
"That is incredibly far from here."
"It takes several months of walking to reach this village from there," Lucian said with a gentle smile.
"That's truly unbelievable,"
the old woman whispered.
Lucian glanced around the humble home, then asked softly, "Is it just the two of you living here?"
The village chief's expression collapsed into sorrow the moment the question left Lucian's lips. "We once had a younger son," he said hoarsely.
"But a few years ago, one night,
he was taken and eaten by that monster living in the mountains behind Lacunosa."
Lucian paused for a moment, then couldn't help asking, "A monster?"
"Alas!" the old man sighed.
"Yes. That monster appeared out of nowhere decades ago.
It lives in the giant's cave behind the village." As he spoke, the old man suddenly seemed to remember something. His expression turned grave as he warned.
"I almost forgot. No matter what you hear at night, you must never leave the house. Why? Lucian asked, pretending ignorance.
Because that monster often comes to the village at night, the village chief said, face clouded with fear.
It snatches villagers away and eats them. My child was taken and devoured by that creature. Just like in the rumors. Hearing this, Lucian fell silent.
Seeing the grief etched on the old couple's faces, he began to doubt the story.
Judging from their expressions, could Kiram really be a man-eater?
When her husband mentioned their son, the old woman's face twisted with pain, and she covered it with her hands as she began to sob. They'd thought of revenge before, but that monster was simply far too powerful.
What do you call this monster? Lucian asked. Kiram. We named it Kiram, the old chief replied. Does it come to the village every night? Lucian continued.
The old man shook his head.
No. It only comes when it's hungry. Have you ever actually seen it eating people with your own eyes? Lucian asked carefully.
At that, the chief's expression darkened with anger.
Their child had been taken, how could he possibly lie about something like that? Realizing how his question sounded, Lucian quickly added, I'm sorry, that's not what I meant. To be honest, I'm a traveling beast master. It's possible I might be able to help you.
The old village chief's anger slowly subsided, replaced by shock.
A beast master? A legendary figure who could command magical beasts and fight alongside them? The couple looked again at the Victini by Lucian's side and finally grasped just who their guest might be.
The two elders exchanged a glance, then suddenly stood and dropped to their knees. Beastmaster, please save our village. Avenge us, the chief pleaded.
Lucian was taken aback for a heartbeat, then said gently, Don't be hasty. Please, get up and tell me everything in detail. Yes. Their voices became extremely respectful as they slowly recounted Kiram's story. That monster appeared in this region about 40 years ago. My father told me that, on that day, a huge burning rock fell from the sky and crashed into the mountains nearby. A terrible monster lived inside that rock. At first, it didn't come to the village. But after it had eaten everything in the mountains, it started coming here, snatching people and eating them. This has gone on for many years.
Beastmaster, we beg you, please help us.
That monster lives deep inside the Giant's Cave in the back mountain. Chapter 128, Giant's Cave.
Inside the simple wooden house in Lacunosa village, an elderly white-haired couple looked at Lucian with pleading eyes. Lord Beastmaster, please save our village.
Please save everyone here.
Lucian watched them quietly, doubts rising in his heart. The legends he knew came from thousands of years in the future. With such a long span of time, truth often twisted through generations of retelling.
If Kiram were truly a man-eating dragon, why would the people of Lacunosa village have stayed here for decades instead of moving elsewhere? And in the modern era, the Unova League certainly wouldn't let a man-eating Kiram roam freely. Lucian couldn't make a conclusion until he understood the truth. After a moment of silence, he finally said, I will do my best, but I need to understand some things first. When did this monster begin eating people? When was the most recent disappearance? Has anyone actually witnessed the monster eating someone?
The old woman wiped her eyes, trying to recall.
According to the elders, the monster began eating people during its 5th year living in the mountain. The last incident was 3 months ago. That night, the monster came into the village, and a young man named Shin was taken away and eaten. No one has ever seen its true appearance. Everyone shuts their doors tightly after sunset. But the monster knocks on doors and lures people out. And whenever it appears, it snows, and the wind turns icy cold. Hearing this, Lucian narrowed his eyes. He had been unsure before, but now he felt certain, the creature they described was absolutely not Kiram. Kiram would never politely knock on doors. If Kiram had wanted to attack, the entire village would already be frozen solid. How often does it come? Lucian asked. It varies. Sometimes every 2 or 3 months, sometimes once a year.
but if you just ignore the knocking and don't open the door, it won't take you. So for decades now, we've followed the rule, never leave the house after dark.
A monster with rules and restraint. Lucian nodded slightly.
He had learned what he needed for now.
I understand. I'll stay in the village for a while. If the monster appears, I will do my best to handle it.
The elderly couple immediately bowed in gratitude. Please, Lord Beastmaster, we entrust our lives to you. The old woman prepared a simple bed.
Lucian didn't mind.
After dinner, he rested with Victini while keeping Superior and Dragonair inside their pokeballs to avoid alarming the villagers. The first night passed uneventfully. Early the next morning, Lucian asked for the location of the giant's cave, gathered enough food and water, and left Lacunosa village. When the villagers learned that a Beastmaster had come to defeat the monster, they gathered at the entrance of the village to see him off.
The giant's cave lay in the mountains northeast of the village, not far away. Lucian rode forward, observing the surroundings.
Though it was mid-June and summer was approaching, Lacunosa village still carried a faint chill, one that grew sharper the closer he got to the mountain. And along the way, ice-type Pokémon grew more numerous. A drifting cloud of cryogonal glimmered in the air. Delibird fluttered overhead. Several Sneasel hid in the shadows, watching warily. The roar of a Beartick echoed from deep within the mountains.
Weevil. A low growl came from behind as several Weevil attempted a sneak attack. Thankfully, Lucian had prepared beforehand and released Superior the moment he entered the wilderness.
Disgusted by the ambush, Superior immediately unleashed Leafstorm. Sharp leaves whipped into a violent vortex, swallowing the Weevil in an instant.
Victini sat on Lucian's shoulder, watching with interest. Nini?
Don't worry, Lucian said calmly.
Enemies of this level don't require your power. Sensing danger, the Weevil quickly scattered and fled. Lucian did not pursue them.
He simply patted Superior's head and continued onward. Before long, a massive cave appeared in the mountains ahead. Cold mist seeped from the opening, and an ancient, terrifying aura flowed outward, powerful enough to make one's spine tremble.
Even Victini's expression grew serious as it felt the presence within. Nini!
Victini cried out sharply, warning Lucian to be careful.
A powerful presence was watching them from inside the cavern. I know. Lucian inhaled slowly.
Now that they had come this far, there was no turning back. The Giant's Cave, a forbidden place to the people of Lacunosa village, had been formed decades ago by a meteorite crash. The outer caverns formed a natural barrier, sealing the central crater where Curum was said to reside.
Lucian looked up.
Countless cryogonal drifted through the air like ghostly, floating crystals. The cold energy radiating from deep within the cave distorted the local ecosystem itself, creating a bizarre world of eternal frost.
On the cliff opposite the cave entrance, 3 Pokémon stood quietly, observing the lone human and the small group beside him. They were massive, powerful, and unmistakable. The first, on the left, resembled an iron-bodied bull, its body shaped like a fortress wall. Rage burned in its eyes. That human is despicable. Imprisoning Pokémon in such a tiny space. Let me go down there and teach him a lesson. Terrakion snarled.
Calm yourself, Terrakion. The Blueford, goat-like Pokémon beside him, Cobalion, spoke in a composed tone. Its stance was rigid, noble, and vigilant as it studied Lucian below.
How can I calm down? Terrakion roared back. Have you forgotten how many Pokémon lost their homes because of human wars? How many territories ruined? How many families destroyed?
We did not come here to judge humans.
Cobalion's voice remained steady, unwavering. The power humans hold is not something that can be ignored. Before any confrontation, we must continue training.
Only then can we protect the Pokémon of this land.
Terrakion stomped, furious but unable to refute Cobalion's reasoning.
At that moment, the third Pokémon stepped forward. Its elegant green body shimmered like polished jade. Its scarlet eyes were gentle yet discerning. The breeze carried a faint fragrance of leaves as Verizian spoke softly.
Terrakian, Cobalion, look at the expression on that human's face. He isn't here to harm anyone. His gaze is fixed on the cave. Verizian narrowed its eyes slightly. He seems to be here for Curum, the same reason we came. Chapter 129, Curum appears. Verizian, Cobalion, and Terrakian.
They had once lived peacefully on this land. Until one day, humans waged a devastating war, and countless Pokémon lost their homes, their freedom, and even their lives. Witnessing this cruelty, the three Pokémon were filled with righteous fury. So they formed the group known as the Swords of Justice. From that day on, all three devoted themselves to protecting Pokémon whose homelands had been ravaged by human conflict. But after many years of fighting, the three of them gradually understood a painful truth. Even with their combined power, it still wasn't enough. If they wanted to truly guard their fellow Pokémon, they needed to grow stronger, much stronger. Thus, they began a long period of strict training. And this time, they had come here for that very purpose. Deep in these mountains dwelled a powerful being. If they could overcome it, they would take another massive step toward becoming stronger Swords of Justice. But before they could make their challenge, someone else had arrived first. A human. A human accompanied by several Pokémon. Humph, Curum isn't someone any random fool can challenge, Terrakian growled, hostility burning in his eyes.
That human is overestimating himself. Cobalion did not speak. He simply observed the figure below with calm, serious eyes.
The human stood silently at the entrance of the cavern for a long time, as if gathering his resolve, and then stepped inside with deliberate determination.
His silhouette disappeared into the darkness. Should we follow? Verizian asked softly.
They had no reason to care about humans, but they couldn't ignore the Pokémon that followed him.
They didn't want to see them get devoured by Curum. They were ready to intervene at any moment.
And if necessary, liberate the Pokémon that human carried.
Poof. Let's go watch that human get flattened by Curum. Terrakian pawed the cliff impatiently. Cobalion finally nodded. Very well.
The interior of the giant's cave was pitch black.
Victini concentrated its flame into its large V-shaped ears, illuminating their surroundings with a gentle golden glow.
Thanks, Victini, Lucian said softly.
Nini. Victini chirped, circling him cheerfully.
Serperior slithered silently behind Lucian. The cold air was biting. For a grass type like Serperior, this place was uncomfortable and hostile. But as Lucian's Pokémon, it could feel the heavy tension radiating from him. Serperior suddenly paused and looked toward Lucian.
What's wrong, Serperior? Lucian turned back, noticing the unusual expression on its usually proud face. HRR. A flicker of worry shone in Serperior's eyes. Lucian froze for a moment. He hadn't expected Serperior to be so perceptive. It was true, he was nervous.
Curum was no ordinary opponent, it was a terrifying legendary Pokémon capable of freezing half of Unova in an instant. With their current strength, they had no chance of defeating it. Should he really push forward into a battle he couldn't possibly win? Lucian didn't know the answer. Faces from his territory flashed through his mind, the townspeople who trusted him, the Pokémon who followed him.
Mac Hoke. Doug Trio. Garridos. Minchino. Larvesta.
Dragonair, all of them had put their hopes onto him.
He could only move forward.
War was approaching.
Chaos was looming.
If he didn't secure Curum's acknowledgement, his land, the only place where humans and Pokémon live truly as equals, would be swallowed by the storm. His emotions churned painfully, but he still managed to force a faint smile.
Don't worry. I'll be fine, Serperior. Serperior didn't say anything.
Instead, it extended a slender vine and gently wrapped it around Lucian's hand.
As if telling him, you're not alone.
We're with you.
Seeing Serperior's gesture, Lucian paused, took a deep breath, and felt his resolve solidify. He nodded firmly. Yes.
A moment later, the space ahead suddenly widened. Lucian blinked, realizing they had passed through the outer cavern and arrived at the central crater.
The interior was immense.
Even after decades or centuries, the scars of the meteorite impact were still visible.
The gigantic celestial rock had smashed into the ground, blown open an entire crater, and ruptured underground water veins.
Torrents of groundwater had surged out and pooled into a vast lake at the center. It was still dim, the air icy, the silence oppressive.
Lucian looked around but didn't see Kiram.
But the chill that seemed to pierce bone and the overwhelming aura that filled the entire chamber.
Kiram was here. Clenching his fist, Lucian shouted across the cavern. Kiram! Come forth! I am Lucian, the third prince of the kingdom of Eindhoek, and I have come to challenge you. Reshiram and Zekrom have awakened, and a terrible war is about to sweep across Unova. Countless humans and Pokémon will die. I want to stop this. To do that, I need your strength.
In return, I will help you restore your lost primal power.
Kiram, appear.
His voice echoed across the ice and stone.
For a long time, nothing answered him.
The cave was silent enough that Lucian could hear the underground river flowing far beneath the frozen crust.
Was Kiram not here? A faint frustration tightened Lucian's chest. Then.
A low, distant sound rumbled from deep within the darkness. It was ancient, resonant, and so heavy it felt like the ceiling trembled.
Something stirred. The temperature plummeted. White mist rolled across the ground like a living fog.
When the cold reached the lake, the water froze instantly, ice racing across its surface until the entire lake had become a sheet of shimmering frozen glass. Then came the sound of footsteps.
Slow. Heavy. Reverberating.
A voice flowed out of the darkness, old yet majestic.
Do you have the right to claim my power?
From the shadows, a colossal figure emerged.
Kiram stepped into view, its icy body radiating an aura so cold that Lucian's breath froze in the air.
Frost crawled up his clothes and hair.
Superior's scales glazed over with ice. Even Victini's flame dimmed in fear.
This was a legendary Pokémon. It hadn't used a single move, not even a flicker of intent.
Its presence alone was oppressive enough to freeze the world around it.
Lucian tightened his stance, teeth clenched.
No matter what. I have to try, he said in a low voice. Kiram watched him in silence, towering above them, an ancient glacier given life. The pressure in the air was suffocating. But Lucian did not look away.
After a long, heavy pause, Kiram finally spoke.
Very well.
Chapter 130, Kiram's terrifying strength. Since that is the case, then prove your strength to me.
A dragon's roar shook the cavern as Kiram released a terrifying pressure that surged outward.
Crackling noises spread across the frozen lake.
Layers of ice rose upward, intertwining and locking together until a circular ice wall encircled the entire lake.
In the blink of an eye, the entire lake had become a sealed ice arena, radiating a biting chill.
Before Lucian's eyes, Kiram's power shaped a jagged ice gate at the edge of the arena. Kiram exhaled 2 streams of pale frost from its nostrils.
Its massive, heavy body advanced step by step, its weathered voice echoing through the cave.
Go through that door. Lucian understood immediately. This was Kiram recognizing his challenge. But
Lucian glanced at the pokeballs at his waist.
Dragonair and Larvesta.
With their current strength, they stood absolutely no chance against a being like Kiram. There was no turning back now.
Lucian knew the truth.
To gain a legendary Pokémon's allegiance, defeating it was not enough. What mattered more was earning its recognition. This battle was not simply a contest of strength. It was a test of will, conviction, and purpose.
Legend said the original dragon split into 3 parts.
The light stone gave birth to Reshiram.
The dark stone gave birth to Zekrom.
And the empty husk, the shell that remained, became Kiram. Just as Reshiram saw truth and Zekrom pursued ideals, Kiram too awaited the person who could fill the void in its heart.
Lucian could not retreat.
No matter the outcome, he had to show Kiram the convictions he carried.
Steeling himself, Lucian lifted his foot and stepped into the ice gate.
Kiram narrowed its icy eyes, exhaled a blast of frost, then let out a roar as it charged forward like an avalanche. It swung its claws in a sweeping arc.
Shadow Claw. Lucian reacted instantly. Superior, create distance. Lee Storm.
Superior's life form slid across the ice and leapt upward, twisting gracefully as it landed atop a rising ice pillar. At the same time, a swirling tempest of razor-sharp leaves erupted outward. The storm hit Kiram head-on.
Kiram simply snorted. Shadowclaw sliced through the gale of leaves with terrifying ease. Before Superior could reposition, Kiram's mouth glowed with gathering frost. A beam of icy light blasted forth. Dodge! Superior's tail muscles tightened, launching its long body into the air.
The freezing beam narrowly missed.
But Kiram's follow-up strike came instantly. Shadowclaw swept upward. The blow sent Superior flying, its body skidding across the ice. Kiram's ancient voice echoed. Is this all your power?
A second freezing beam flashed across the arena, engulfing Superior completely.
Superior collapsed in a single hit. Lucian clenched his jaw.
He sprinted forward, knelt beside Superior, and pulled a full restore from his bag. He sprayed Superior's battered scales until the light returned to its eyes.
Kiram quietly watched.
Only when Lucian finished did Kiram speak again.
The battle is not over. I know. Lucian stood, inhaled deeply, and raised Dragonair's Pokeball. But the moment Dragonair materialized, a wave of ice-type energy struck. Dragonair froze solid. Kiram's voice thundered across the crater. Weak. Too weak.
To Kiram, this was not a battle but an insult.
Lucian's heart tightened. He silently took out the next Pokeball. Within 5 seconds, Larvesta's fiery body dimmed and went cold under the overwhelming chill. On the rocky cliff above the cave, the three swordsmen silently watched the battle unfold below. Look at that human.
He is really overestimating himself, Terrakion said with a mocking snort. But Virizian's sharp eyes noticed something unusual.
Those Pokémon were following the human's commands. Cobalion said nothing. Calm and composed, it continued observing the scene in silence.
Inside the frozen arena, Victini had witnessed everything. Its little face was full of anger as it looked at Lucian, now standing alone on the ice.
Nini. It had promised the old king it would never allow anyone to bully Lucian.
Victini shot forward, flames flickering, glaring fiercely at Kiram.
Nini. Oh. So there is still a little one left? Kiram's cold gaze shifted toward Victini. The battle was not over. Lucian exhaled, steadied himself, and spoke in a deep voice. Victini, please. Victini nodded fiercely. Nini.
Kiram swung its massive shadow claw downward. Victini darted aside just in time, its tiny body weaving around the attack with ease.
Now. Fireball. Nini. A surge of brilliant flames erupted from Victini's body, exploding outward.
The scorching heat melted the ice with sharp hissing sounds. A few fireballs struck Kiram's armored hide.
This was the first rail hit they had landed. For an instant, a spark of hope lit in Lucian's chest. But Kiram simply exhaled, unimpressed.
Power surged across its body, heavy and suffocating like the weight of a mountain.
The melted ice refroze instantly.
Even the air seemed to crystallize wherever Kiram's power passed.
The flames surrounding Victini flickered and died. Victini's eyes widened. It tried to escape upward. It was too late. Its small body froze solid in midair, encased in ice. Lucian's heart dropped.
A wave of despair washed over him.
He knew that move. Frozen world. Kyurem's signature power, a force so overwhelming it could freeze an entire city in an instant. The cold surged outward, rushing across the arena. In moments it reached Lucien. His boots froze to the ground. Ice crept rapidly up his legs. Just as it was about to envelop him completely, Kyurem suddenly stopped. The icy aura receded slightly. "You are not worthy to wield my power," Kyurem said, its tone cold and merciless. It slowly turned away. Its massive silhouette dissolved into the misty darkness at the back of the cave, leaving only its echo reverberating across the frozen arena. Leave. That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated to a Medieval Pokémon World. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.